Hello. So as was mentioned, for the past 6 years, my job has been being a professional entertainer, mainly a professional magician, and then recently doing a professional acting in a film. But my life hasn't always been this luxurious, you could say. At one point, I had a very interesting job, and we'll show that. Yes, this is real. I used to clean porta potties. It was a crappy job. I actually appreciate the reserve in laughter because that was a very low-hanging fruit comedy joke. So thank you for holding your laughter. It was tough. People ask, how do you get this job? I will explain. Love. Love is the only way you can get a job like this. You see, I was freshly starting college. I was 21 years old, and I had gone to school for 1 year. And at the end of that summer, I had a nice paying job lined up on the East Coast. But also at the beginning of right before that, I had met a girl and I fell madly in love and wanted to marry her after only 3 weeks of knowing her. And so I decided that I wanted to spend time with her that summer. And so I wasn't going to go to the East Coast. And so I quit that job and then told her, I'm actually staying for the summer and we can be together. She's like, well, what are you going to do for a job? I said, crap, I don't know. Foreshadowing right there. Now, my aunt had told me about a guy in her neighborhood that owned a porta potty company when I had moved to college a year earlier. But I said, no, thank you, I have standards, I will not do that job. But then at the end of the year, I thought, well, I need a job. I wonder if this guy still has a job available. So I gave him a call, and he said, I actually had a guy just quit, so if you'd like to start on Monday, you can. It's like, this is awesome. I get to spend time with the girl I love and get to have a job that pays well. Didn't care what it was. So we had gone to see my family that weekend, came back, and woke up Monday morning to start my new job and got a knock on the door. And the girl was there, and she said, I've actually given this some thought, and I don't think we should date anymore. Literally the crappiest day of my life. And so I went and started this job cleaning porta potties, now single, and feeling so lost and so alone. You know, it actually did start as a good summer job because it did pay well, and I could still have time to do things. And in the school year, I had time to go to school, but eventually they started giving me more and more hours to the point that I could no longer be at school, and I had to clean porta potties for 13 hours a day. And it was just like this poisoned by degrees thing. I didn't realize where I was until I was just in the middle of it. Well, it came to this point at about a year in that I felt so lost and so stuck in this porta potty job, and that's not a place you want to feel stuck. I had no money. Girls didn't want to talk to me. And that's not just like a joke. They didn't, because when I would tell them what I did, they were like, oh, okay. I just felt I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. A year earlier, I had started with this clean slate, and now here I was cleaning porta potties for 13 hours a day. Here's how bad my job was. One day I showed up to work, and my boss had 2 convicts there. Apparently, they had put a dry ice bomb inside of a porta potty, and the whole thing exploded. And so their punishment was to come work with me for a week. Yeah, the government used my job to teach convicts a lesson. At the end of 2 weeks, they left, and I thought, wait, who's the one that's in trouble here? And that's how I felt, lost. I couldn't quit because I had an incident at that job where I backed into a garage door, and I had to either be incident-free for a year or pay $1,000, and I was still saving up that money. So I felt stuck. I wonder how many of us feel that sometimes in our lives, where we just feel stuck. But I was optimistic, and in that moment, I did something. I wrote my future self a letter. And I'm going to read a little bit of that. It says, "Dear Stuart, this letter is from someone who knows you pretty well. I know how you are feeling, and I know what you like to do. The purpose of this letter is to remind you of the excitement you have had, the hard times, the happy times, and the lessons learned. Right now, you are hopefully following your dreams and goals. That's something you are trying to do. And you set the goal to pursue music. It started out a little rough, but after a while, you remembered it and got a Facebook page started, and it had 89 people who liked it. Work right now is honey bucket. You don't know how you do it, but you work 13 plus hours a day. Crazy. So many times you have been blessed to have straight, sorry, I'm just reading myself right here. So many times you have been blessed to go to work all day with only 4 hours of sleep. You wonder where you will be in 6 months, wonder where you will be working." So I wrote this letter in June 2012 and then continued to work. And I decided, I had to get myself out of this crappy situation somehow. So instead of listening to talk radio, I would listen to inspirational podcasts and listening to how people got out of their crappy situations. I did that for 6 weeks. And it got to the point where I was now excited for work and also excited for things like tipped over porta potties, which normally added 10 minutes to my day. And now I got another podcast to listen to. At the end of the 6 weeks, I listened to 2 podcasts back to back. One was about a gentleman that had lost his family in a car wreck. And I just remember feeling so inspired and thinking, I want to inspire people like that. The next podcast was on someone that did filmmaking, and they said that they took every opportunity they could to start making film. Something clicked. I said, that is what I want to do. I want to inspire people through filmmaking. And so I went home and bought a camera. I had $800 saved up that I was saving to pay off the garage door incident, and put that towards a camera and started taking that camera with me everywhere. After about a few months of doing that, I ran into a friend that made videos for a living, and he said, "I see you taking this camera around. Would you like to get a job making videos?" I said, "Yeah, I would love it." He ended up introducing me to a company that made YouTube videos. I learned how to make YouTube videos. I was able to quit the porta potty job. And then in December 2012, I just had this idea that it would be funny to do an experiment to see what would happen if 2 people were talking and a mistletoe dropped in between them and see if they would kiss. So I went and I filmed this video, uploaded it to YouTube, December 12th, 2012 at midnight, went to bed, and my life hasn't slowed down since. I woke up and that video was going viral. It got 1 million views that day, 10 million views that week, and started this career in entertainment. It was exactly 6 months from the day that I wrote that letter where I asked myself, where would I be in 6 months? I ended up being able to perform magic on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon only 9 months after that letter. If only my younger self would have known what was just within a year of his lowest moment. But that's not the end of the story. You see, I've gone and I've told this story to people, but there's actually more to it, and it's actually a harder story because things started to rise, and my fame and success started to rise, but with that, I started to deal with a lot of self-doubt, anxiety, depression, and this polarizing effect of being well-known and having to maintain a status, but feeling so empty and alone and worried inside. Feeling shame and trauma for things in my life that were in my control and both out of my control. Started to soothe those with problematic behaviors, things that weren't the best, and just continued this downward spiral behind closed doors of what everyone was seeing in the limelight. And I got to a really low point and wrote a book called How My Crappy Job Changed My Life, thinking that this would soar me back up. And it didn't. I continued to fall and to fall and to fall until last year, 2018, where I got to this point where I was at my lowest again, back how I felt when I was cleaning porta potties, except this time I didn't have to look at poop involuntarily all day. Not saying I didn't look at poop all day. No, I didn't. So in this low moment again, which was actually much harder because of where I had been and feeling like I had failed again, and I had got myself there, I just felt so lost. I came across that letter that my younger self had written me. And I read it, and I was like, man, he was so happy. So what I did is I wrote him a letter back. And I said, "Dear Stuart, how did you do it? You worked 10 to 15 hours a day doing hard work that was really tough, and you still had time to write songs, do band practice, go on dates, study in school. You did so much and were so happy. I remember you being so happy and fulfilled, even in the face of hard things and a breakup. You had a breakup on the day you started cleaning porta potties." And that Stuart wrote back. The pen jumps off the page and starts writing. No, it didn't. I wrote myself back. I said, "Stuart, I worked hard. I started with where I was at and I moved forward. If I wanted to learn something, I found a way to and I moved forward. Stuart, trust yourself. You are much more intelligent and wise than me. So I trust you will be able to do things efficiently. You live in a time also where media consumption is so accessible, on your phone in HD. Even though it was only 6 years ago, I didn't have much. I didn't have television. I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have a music streaming service. I spent my time learning new things, playing the guitar, writing songs. I didn't watch movies because I couldn't afford them. I didn't own my own laptop. And when I did, I didn't binge things. Phones were clunky. And something clicked. I realized my downward spiral happened in 2014 and 15, at this time where this media consumption became so accessible. Phones now had retina displays. Social media had gone through its weird phase and now was fledged out. Netflix was finally what Netflix is today. And that continued this spiral. And something I've learned, I'm not a licensed therapist, but something I have learned from them is that there's a part of the brain that views these things as inanimate objects, the things they are, just devices. But there's also a part that views it as a relationship that's being developed. And when dopamine is released and helps soothe us, if too much is released and it's done too consistently, that part of the brain that views it as a relationship can start to override the part that views it as an inanimate object. And we start to develop a dependency on things to soothe us. Rather than what I learned when I wrote myself this letter was finding a dependency on ourselves, to learning to be okay with who we are and be okay with being alone with ourselves. We are in an attention war right now. Netflix fears their biggest competitor is Fortnite, not because Fortnite's going to begin streaming videos, but because they are winning the attention war. So we need to combat that. We need to stand up and we need to make sure to take time for ourselves because you are the most important person in your life. So I want to give an invitation to you that you can take time to be alone with yourself. That may be a scary thing. You're saying, "Stuart, I don't like myself." Well, get to know yourself. Write yourself a letter. See what you write back. Learn about yourself. And I promise if you do this, it may be some of the best advice you've ever received and also some of the best advice you've ever given. My name is Stuart Edge. Thank you so much.